All right, I think folks should be able to see my screen. I'm going to share this so everyone can follow along with me. Well, welcome to Trailblazing at University of Michigan. This session is specifically for our first generation college students, and I'll talk a little bit more about what it means to be a first gen college student and how folks can be set up for success to trailblaze at Michigan. My name is Adan Hussein. I am the first generation program manager. I'm originally from New York City, Astoria, Queens, for any folks who are from New York City in the guest list. I was a first generation college student when I went to college myself. I also was a first generation immigrant where my parents immigrated here. I grew up in the US, so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what it meant to apply to college and how to thrive and navigate a college environment. So first of all, folks, congratulations on your acceptance to University of Michigan. I'm so excited that you will be a part of the Michigan community and specifically the first generation college student community. This series is part of the Getting to Know Michigan series where folks can learn about resources more in depth. You may have learned quite a bit through orientation, or you will learn quite a bit through orientation, where you'll see that University of Michigan has a breadth of resources to offer. This series allows you to get a little bit more in depth with different resources. So today we'll be talking specifically about first generation resources on campus. Before I start talking about them, you're able to add questions in the chat. I also encourage folks to add comments about what excites you about being a first generation college student, and if there's anything that's making you nervous or anxious about being a first generation college student at U of M. I won't be checking the chat throughout. So when you post your questions, I may not know that you posted in that moment, but I will pause occasionally just to check what's going on in the chat, and we'll answer questions there. But feel free to add your questions and comments throughout. So I'll be talking to you a little bit about first generation identity. I'll then share with you what the first generation student gateway office is. I'll talk about the first generation student organization, which I say student organization, and that's similar to a club in high school. One of the key differences is that clubs in high school can often be run by a teacher, whereas a student org is one that's run by students. And as a governing board, that's all run by students. And for the first gen student org, I serve as the advisor. And I'll end with a couple more programs and services that might be helpful to you as a first gen college student. So to start us off, a first generation college student is any student whose parents may have gone to college but did not earn a bachelor's degree. So that would include students whose parents had some college experience, they may have gotten an associate's degree, or may not have gone to college at all. Now, if you're watching this video or a part of the session and don't quite fit that definition, that's okay. Some of these resources might be helpful to you. You might self-identify as a first-gen college student where maybe one of your parents did get a bachelor's degree, but for some reason you just didn't get or were able to connect with them or didn't live with them, and something like this still would be helpful. So you're welcome to learn more about these resources. The key difference is that if either one of your parents did get a bachelor's degree, you might not be getting emails or contact from me. So you'll see my contact information later. So if you want to be added to our listserv, do let me know. You'll also see me use Trailblazer and FirstGen interchangeably. So a Trailblazer is a pioneer, somebody who's willing to take risks and go in a path that isn't already there. They blaze a trail and leave a path for others. And in many ways, maybe in all ways, first generation college students are trailblazers. And we refer to them as such at University of Michigan. So again, I'll go back and forth with that language in this session. So just a little bit more about the FirstGen identity. Again, it's students whose parents did not earn a bachelor's degree. It is a higher ed identity. So it's not maybe something that you haven't really thought about before coming to college. Some of you may have, some of you have not, but it's really something that develops while you're here. And it's okay to explore that. That is something that is really common across the board for students to see, hey, like, what does it mean for me to be a first gen student? What kind of resources are helpful? Maybe it's something that's really important to you in the beginning and not so much later, or maybe it's not important to you in the beginning, but it's really important to you later in your college career. Whatever your journey looks like, it's okay for that to go kind of up and down, and for that identity to shift and change depending on what your experience at University of Michigan is like. You'll see on the top a picture of Calvin Harris, also known as Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg's son goes to UCLA, or at this point went to UCLA, and Snoop Dogg has all the financial resources to support his son going to college, but his son is still a first generation student. So at University of Michigan, we'll see a range of social class, people coming from different financial backgrounds represented in the first generation population. So first gen is not the same as social class, but they are closely related, and I'll share a little bit more about that later. And then lastly, first gen is an invisible identity. Folks may not know you're first gen just by looking at you, and you may not know who else is a first generation college student on campus. It's also an identity that might be really important related to other ones that you might have. So it might be important to you that you're a first gen student of color, or you're a first generation student who comes from a rural community or one from an urban community. It's really common for first gen to be tied to another one. But again, it's something that's invisible. So we want to make sure that you're connected to a community and you know who else is first gen on campus. So at University of Michigan, there are about 3,500 to 4,000 first gens. That is a lot. So the community is large and it's pretty spread out across campus. So that ends up making up between 12.5% to 15% of all undergraduate students at U of M who are also first gen. About 2/3 of first generation students come from family income backgrounds that are less than 65K. And about 10% of graduate students are first generation college students. So these are graduate students who are first in their families to get a bachelor's degree and then went on to continue to go to graduate school. So again, the community is pretty spread out. It's large. But again, you may not know who's first gen. So a lot of our programming helps to connect you to other folks on campus. So I'm going to pause here real quick to take a look at the Q&A to see if there's any questions. And I see one. If parents earned a bachelor's degree from a non-4-year college or another country, does that count us as first gen? So yes, it does. So on the back end, I reach out to students whose parents did not get a bachelor's degree. So usually that's something, not usually, all of the time, that's coming from the student's application to University of Michigan. if you have put on your application that your parents got a bachelor's degree and it was from outside of the US, I may not know that information. So I might need you to be proactive and let me know that this is a program and this is the type of initiative that you'd like to get more involved in. Great question. All right, looks like that's the only one for now. Keep your questions and submit any comments related to things that are making you excited and or anxious about college. So the first resource I want to let you know about is the FirstGeneration Student Gateway Office. This is a physical space on campus that is for first-generation college students. And we also have initiatives and programs that come out of the Student Gateway. The goals for this office are to help students navigate the many resources at University of Michigan. University of Michigan is resource rich. There's programs within departments, there's centralized programs, there's thousands of student organizations. There's lots of different offices that are there for student support. So the Gateway helps students figure out what resources might be helpful at different times of their college journey. And we support students from right at the beginning toward graduation and also in graduate school. The Gateway also helps connect students to, and it supports the first-generation student community. And we also help the campus develop an understanding and awareness of the first-generation student identity. So we want students to know about first-generation programs. So we want them to know that we count them as a first-gen student and that there's resources available for them. We also want the community to know about the first-gen student population. So we do workshops with faculty and staff to let them know how they can be more supportive of first gens. The Gateway office is located within the Student Activities building. So if you have not been on campus yet, this might not be as relevant for you, but we are located behind the Michigan Union and behind the Trotter Multicultural Center. The address for the Student Gateway is below that image. It's 515 East Jefferson Street, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 48109. We're located on the 3rd floor of the Student Activities building within the Office of Academic Multicultural Initiatives, which is also a really great office to know about, and I'll chat a little bit more about that later. So I talked about connecting students to the first-generation community. Our opening event for the year is the First-Generation Student Open House. All first-generation students will be emailed an invitation to register for this event. It's specifically for first-year and transfer first-generation students. And there will be virtual and in-person options that you can select in registration. This event is for students to connect with staff and faculty who oversee programs that are either related to first-generation students, or first-generation students are a target population for that office. And it's a neat way to connect on a more personal level and get to know staff who want to be there and want to be allies to first-generation students. We also invite upper class first-gen students. So this is a nice intimate way to get to know folks on campus right at the beginning of the year. In the past, we've also invited parents to be a part of this event, but because of capacity, we aren't inviting parents this year, but we'll do that in following years. We have, after the open house for first years, we do community dinners, which are larger in scale. And that's really for the first gen community to see how big it is, and for students to get to connect with students across campus and across disciplines. Normally we have dinner and food available, so come and you have fun, we break bread together. And we also have themes to different dinners that are related to leadership development, study abroad, relationships with families, and wellness. So these are our signature dinner events. We focus on student development within these dinners, but they're also meant to be casual and fun so that you can connect with other students and build relationships. Every year we host FirstGen Week. That happens at the last week of October and sometimes spills into November. FirstGen Week celebrates the first generation student identity at University of Michigan. We host events ranging from the election that we had this last year. We had events with folks who are interested in entrepreneurship, and we connected them to a company that helps students develop their business idea. We have multiple mentorship programs on campus, and we help students try to navigate which ones would be best for them. So one of our events is related to mentorship. We do a lot of storytelling within our office too, so that students learn what their journey was like coming to college, and what their journey is like here. So we do storytelling, and we also have some fun events where you see FirstGen Halloween. We did virtual pumpkin drawing, and sometimes we do pumpkin carving for that event. So it's really fun, it's exciting. We have the whole campus involved with FirstGen Week. So for 2021, look forward to a similar time frame and an announcement for when that will be. And this won't be relevant for you until graduation. But once you are ready to graduate, you have completed your degree requirements, and you're ready to take on the world. We celebrate you and your accomplishments toward the end of the year. So the first generation graduation is for first generation college students, and is supplemental to the large university commencement. This ceremony happens before the larger commencement, and students receive an honor cord and some swag to send them off into the real world as first generation graduates that you all will eventually be. The graduation is open to undergraduate students who are graduating, and if you end up graduating again as a graduate student, you get to come to this event multiple times. How cool is that? We also have smaller events throughout the year, and we have other programs that are helpful for students. So we have an internship action team that helps students stay accountable to applying to internships together. We also provide resources on how folks can build their resume, where they could find internships, and how they can network with folks from different companies to learn a little bit more about what they do and whether if that company would be a good fit for you. We do career chats with the Career Center. Those are informal and drop in for folks to learn a little bit more about how they can be connected to different resources for their career and professional development. We have FirstGen Abroad, where we share experiences that first generation college students have had by going to another country and then coming back to share what that was like being a FirstGen student applying for study abroad programs, being in another country as a FirstGen student, and bringing that up with parents and families. We do workshops on imposter syndrome. We do advisor workshops and trainings. We have research that comes out of the FirstGen Gateway, specifically on first generation college students. And University of Michigan is a first forward advisory institution, which means that we have shown leadership in our first generation programming, and we advise other institutions on how they can grow their first gen program. So I thought that was a really unique thing that we have. I want to share that with you all. So I'm going to pause here again just to check the chat for any questions. So I see a question about someone's daughter who is part of the Kessler Scholarship Program. So all of the students who are part of the Kessler Scholars are first generation college students. So if they're part of that program, they will get emails from the Gateway. It looks like that's the only other question we have so far. All right, we're making good progress here, folks. So that's a little bit about the Gateway. And now I want to talk a little bit about first generation college students at Michigan. This is the first generation student org. They're a central org. So any first generation student at any department or college on campus can be a part of this organization. This is student run. And I serve as the advisor for first generation college students. They are a really important organization at University of Michigan. They started in fall 2007 and have continued. And the reason I say that they're important is it was because of students that we have a first generation gateway and that we have these programs and events. One student asked their professor if there was a first generation student org. And the professor said, I don't think so. Why don't you start one? And that student went ahead and started this organization. And it started with a small group of students who had a budget just for printing for flyers. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And faculty and staff worked together to make sure that the organization continued to grow. And now it has a series of resources. So this is a really important organization. It's near and dear to my work. And we work closely together to make sure that there's programs and workshops for students that would be helpful for them across their academic career at U of M. And sometimes my pet corgi will make a surprise visit to events. So if that's an incentive for folks to come, please do join. We welcome animal lovers. I want to introduce you to our e-board. So these are, this is the executive board for first generation college students. We have a president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. And you'll see a stronger box around Jeanette Chung, who is the secretary. She is the person that manages the membership and also our newsletter for first generation college students at Michigan, which I'm going to call FGCS from here on. Members can join at any time, but FGCS will be present at Festifall. Festifall is the beginning of year event where all student organizations, departments across campus have tables, either virtual or in person. And that's a way for folks to sign up or learn a little bit more about the organization. So they will be present there. But if for some reason you weren't able to attend, you can always email Jeanette to let her know that you want to join the organization. And her email is included there. So in this last year during the pandemic, all of our events were virtual, including the Gateway events. You saw some of the ones that were done in person with some of those dinners, those activities. So those were all done virtually last year. And so some of the virtual activities that the org does are study tables, game nights. We have socials, so we do ice cream socials when we've been in person. Also, there's networking and professional development that happens. So we collaborate with the University Career Center and the LSNA Opportunity Hub. We do internship searches, alumni connections. We tackle virtual interviews and do some resume building. Now, that weekly newsletter that I talked about earlier, that newsletter includes upcoming events for first generation students. So it includes all the ones that I talked about earlier. Students also have a say on what types of events happen. So we will send out surveys to students so that they can have a say in what kind of social activities they want or what kind of internships they want to be involved in. The exec board also hosts office hours. So these are drop-in, and those weekly newsletters will include how folks can drop into those office hours. And that way folks can connect more personally with the FirstGen exec board. And they can ask them questions related to really anything related to be a first generation student. It could be around academics, where to get tutoring, how to sign up for classes. Sometimes they're able to help them figure out links that they need to go to for financial aid. So there's lots of things that folks can utilize the office hours so that they can connect with another peer who's been through the experiences that you might end up going through. So I want to share a little message from our first generation students. So I'm going to play this video so that you can hear more directly from the experiences of students who've been through U of M. And can highlight some of the things that worked really well for them.
From out of state and being a first generation student was very unfathomable at the time. I was like, what am I doing here?
Being a first generation college student means to me that I'm sort of trailblazing and creating a new pathway for people in my family, but also other students like me.
It fills me with a lot of pride, you know, that I'm the first in my whole family to go to Michigan. No one's had that chance to take a leap to college, and especially like a four-year school like Michigan.
Spent most of my childhood in Detroit. Grew up in a single parent home. It's crazy how things work out in life. I've always been a Michigan fan. It's kind of crazy because my first semester here, I used to see like posters, FirstGen, and I think to myself like that's me because my mom didn't finish high school. I'm the second oldest, but I'm the first to graduate high school and the first in my family to really go to a big school.
Coming to campus at University of Michigan, it's like really big, and I was really intimidated. And I had this perception that all the other students on campus were better prepared than I was. It seemed like a lot of the students I interacted with, undergrad and graduate students, had parents who had gone to college and parents who had gone to University of Michigan also. So they had this kind of expertise about University of Michigan that I didn't share and that I didn't have.
My parents, they pushed me in the direction to go to college because they wanted a better life for me than what they had for themselves. Trying to explain to others like what my parents do and that they aren't college educated. That's when I really realized my first gen experience. Michigan was always my dream school. I applied to a few other schools, but once I got accepted into Michigan, I knew that this is where I wanted to be.
So not only was I going into a big pool of people, but I didn't know where to start or where to go. The student services were there to help me. I also work at the Munger Graduate Residencies, who has a lot of first generation students housed there. So I built a community as well.
It took me a while, but the first resource I found was the first generation college students group. I got to go and finally meet people of the same background, because all of the first month or so, I was looking for someone who came from a background like I was. I ended up joining an aerospace design team up on North Campus in engineering. I've made some of my best friends there. So apart from the first generation college students group, MFly, the aircraft design team, has been one of my saving graces through school.
When I landed on campus, I hit the ground running. I reached out to my resources, and because I know that if I don't, I'm gonna suffer in silence and might not make it out of here. And it's one thing getting accepted into Michigan. It's another graduating out of Michigan.
I found the undergraduate group, FirstGens at Michigan. They were really welcoming, and so it was helpful for me to find that group of students and realize there are other students like me here.
I think that there's a huge social economic challenge for first generation students. They don't come from the backgrounds where they are able to do many extracurricular activities. They don't have the background to do a lot of other things that more privileged students have the opportunity to do.
We are here and we are willing to help each other out, definitely.
Michigan is a diverse place, and as first-gen students, you have a lot of diversity to contribute to that community.
You just don't know, like you just keep fighting and keep going to be great. Never know where you end up. To be here is a blessing.
When you're able to say, I'm first gen here at Michigan, people will be supportive when they learn that about you.
It's actually a wonderful thing to be the first to make that possible for your family.
So you may have heard that a lot of the students brought up first generation college students at Michigan. It has been a really important community resource for students before, and it continues to be a really important resource for students. So I wanted to highlight a couple other programs. While these aren't related to the first generation gateway, they're connected to the gateway and also are just helpful for first generation college students. So there is a Success Connects program. It gives one-on-one personalized success coaching for undergraduate students. Students can be connected to a full-time staff coach. And as students progress in their years, they're connected to peer coaches and then to graduate student coaches. There's a University Career Center. I talked about them a little bit earlier, but they have UCAN, which is an alumni network. It is a broad alumni network across disciplines, but you can also filter which alumni are first generation students. And we also have our FirstGen career coach who we partner with, and often she comes to our career coffee chats and also runs the internship action team with me. There's a university mentorship program where you get paired with a peer mentor. You also get a faculty or staff mentor. So you have one-on-one interactions with your mentor, and also group activities that you do with your peer, staff, and faculty mentor. And each mentor has multiple people. So you do activities in groups together. There's the Multi-Ethnic Student Affairs Office. They also have mentorship programs, particularly if you're looking for a mentor based on race and ethnicity. They coordinate Heritage Months, and they also have funding for student orgs so that they could do bigger events that they might not be able to do without that funding. And then there's the Comprehensive Studies program. That is summer bridge, but you can also become a CSP affiliate if you're not already a part of the Comprehensive Studies program. The reason an affiliate would be really great to be if you're not already a part of it is that you get access to advisors within the Comprehensive Studies program, tutoring available to the office, and graduate school testing support. So those are not an exhaustive list of resources. I'm sure you will be able to learn a little bit more through this series. But if you'd like to learn more about the First Generation Gateway, the FirstGen Student Org, and other programs on campus, you can visit our website. I have the link there, but the easier way to find that website is to search for FirstGen UMich, which is UMICH. That will work for other searches too. So if you wanted to find out a financial aid office, what their website is, you could do financial aid UMich. So I'll share with you real quick what our website looks like. So our website has student stories. So these are stories from students who've gone through U of M. We also have some faculty and staff stories listed here. And that video that I shared with you is also located on this page. There's our programs page that summarizes a lot of the resources that first generation students in the past have looked for during their journey at University of Michigan. So folks can browse through these, or if you're looking for something specific, the FirstGen website is a good place to get started. So in summary, first generation students are trailblazers, and we're so excited to have first generation college students be a part of University of Michigan. There's the first generation gateway that is for first generation college students. Students can go there to find resources. We have events throughout the year for students to get connected to other students and get connected to other offices. And folks can also just come to the gateway to study. Our hours and use for the gateway are limited because of the pandemic, but as things develop, we will share more about how much folks are able to use that physical space. But it is a neat space for folks to study, meet other folks. You can find me there. If you're lucky and we have extra shirts, you can get this Michigan FirstGen shirt that you could wear around campus with pride. There's also the first generation college students at Michigan group. They are the first generation student org or club. They do community programs throughout the year. They do social programs and they do professional development work with students. And they really are a community of students that's there to support other first gens. There's resources available across campus. Some of those resources are targeted to first gen, some are more broad. But the ones that are available on the FirstGen website that you can see, again, those aren't exhaustive, but there are a lot of the ones that students ask about and ones that would be helpful for them. So over here, I'm gonna pause and check the chat if there's any questions. So how can we join emails for FGCS? Great question. I will show you the answer in the next slide. Are there any other questions? I'll just pause for a few moments to see if anyone submits anything. Okay, so I see another comment. Is there any first generation financial aid help for parents? The best place that I can direct parents to go is the is the financial aid website. So the easiest way to search for that is financial aid UMICH Office of Finance. It's the Office of Financial Aid that you would look for. That will give you information for parents to support their student with financial aid, and also will give you contact information for folks in getting your specific questions answered. Unfortunately, since I'm not part of the financial aid office, I won't be able to answer specific questions related to financial aid, but great question. All right. So this is to answer that question on how you can get in touch with FGCS. So you can email that first one that says firstgeneboard at umich.edu. Email away your questions about FGCS, and if you're interested in joining, let them know, and they can help you figure out how you can become a member. If you want to learn more about the FirstGen Gateway, you can email firstgengateway@umich.edu. We also have a Facebook page that you're welcome to visit, and we also are on Twitter and Instagram. Okay, that concludes this session. We ended a little bit early, so I will hang out here for a couple more minutes in case folks have comments or any questions for me that I can answer. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining. I hope that this was helpful for you. And again, if you have any follow-up questions, you can email firstgengateway@umich.edu.